Ladies and gentlemen, we all agree, or most of us agree, that the most popular member of the Beatles, and a lot of people say the person who had the most raw talent for the Skins, because a couple of members of the team, as we say, or the boys, could play drums, but Ringo Starr's rise from humble beginnings to be one of the most important drummers in rock history is quite interesting. We're not going to be talking about his Beatles career or even his later solo career and acting career, but Sir Richard Starkey deserves our respect because he's been a survivor. Now, known professionally as Ringo Starr, the English musician, songwriter, and actor, has achieved international fame, again, as a drummer for the Beatles. An occasional lead singer for the band as well, including Yellow Submarine and With a Little Help from My Friends. He also wrote and sang the Beatles songs Don't Pass Me By and Octopus's Garden, as credited as a co-writer of Four Others. Now, Starr's early life almost ended. He was afflicted by life-threatening illnesses during childhood, with periods of prolonged hospitalization. Of course, when he went on that TM retreat, he brought along a whole bunch of cans of baked beans. That's a plug. So that's how he was. Had a hard time with his digestion for years. As a teen, he became interested in the UK skiffle craze and developed a fervent admiration for the genre. In '57, he co-founded his first band, the Eddie Clayton Skiffle Group, which earned several prestigious local bookings before the fad succumbed to American rock and roll around early '58, of course, led by its leader, Lonnie Donegan. When the Beatles formed in 1960, Starr was a member of another Liverpool group, Rory Storm and the Hurricanes. After achieving moderate success in the UK and Hamburg, he quit the Hurricanes when he was asked to join the Beatles in August '62, replacing Pete Best in. It's been covered in the previous podcast here, but truth is stranger than fiction, boys. You have to read why they fired Pete Best, because there's a lot of, not just he's playing, but a lot of peccadillos behind the scenes. Now, born on July 7, 1940 at Madron Street in Dingle, an inner-city area of Liverpool. Is the only child of confectioners Richard Starkey, 1913-81, and Elsa Greaves, 1914-87. Elsie enjoyed singing and dancing, a hobby that she shared with her husband, and was an avid fan of swing music. Prior to the birth of her son, who they called Richie, the couple had spent much of their free time in a local ballroom circuit, but their regular outings ended soon after his birth. Elsie adopted an overprotective approach to raising her son that bordered on fixation. Subsequently, Big Richie, as Starkey's father became known, lost interest in his family, choosing instead to spend long hours drinking and dancing in pubs, sometimes for several consecutive days, or as we call it in Canada, a spree. Now, in an effort to reduce their housing costs, his family moved in '44 to another neighborhood in the Dingle and Admiral Grove. Soon afterwards, his parents separated and he divorced within the year. Starkey later stated that he has no real memories of his father, who made little effort to bond with him, visiting as few as 3 times thereafter. Elsie found it difficult to survive on her ex-husband's support payments of 30 shillings a week, so she took on several menial jobs cleaning houses before securing a position as a barmaid, an occupation that she held for 12 years. Now, this is where the health problems came in. At the age of 6, Starkey developed a bad case of appendicitis. Following a routine appendectomy, he contracted peritonitis, causing him to fall into a coma that lasted days. His recovery spanned 12 months, which he spent away from his family as Liverpool's Myrtle Street Children's Hospital. And of course, that's come the legend of the song Nobody's Child, which did the Wilburys, because it was his mother's favorite song, or one of her favorite songs to sing in tribute to her son. Upon his discharge in May '48, his mother allowed him to stay at home, causing him to miss school. At the age of 8, he was illiterate, with a poor grasp of math. His lack of education contributed to a feeling of alienation at school, which resulted in his regularly playing truant at Sefton Park. After several years of twice-weekly tutoring from his surrogate sister and neighbor, Mary Maguire Crawford, Starkey had nearly caught up to his peers academically. But in '53, he contracted tuberculosis and was admitted to a sanatorium where he remained for 2 years. During his stay, the medical staff made an effort to stimulate motor activity and relieve boredom by encouraging the patients to join the hospital band, leading to his first exposure to a percussion instrument, a makeshift mallet made from a cotton bobbin that he used to strike the cabinets next to his bed. Soon afterwards, he grew increasingly interested in drumming, Receiving a copy of the Allen Answorth song Bedtime for Drums as a convalescent gift from Crawford, Starkey commented, "I was in a hospital band. That's where I really started playing. I never wanted anything else from then on. My grandparents gave me mandolin as a band of banjo, but I didn't want them. My grandfather gave me a harmonica. We had a piano, nothing, only the drums." Now, Starkey attended the St. Silas, a Church of England primary school near his house, where his classmates nicknamed Lazarus, obviously rising from the dead, and later Dinglevale Secondary Modern School, where he showed an aptitude for art and drama, as well as practical subjects including mechanics. As a result of the prolonged hospitalizations, he fell behind his peers scholastically and was ineligible for the 11 plus qualifying exam required for attendance at a grammar school. Now, Ringo at this time said and published, there were different published reports through the year, he was suffering from extreme boredom, and we knew something was going to break open. He was going to fall or was going to rise. On April 17th, 1954, Starkey's mother married Harry Graves at a register office on Mount Pleasant in Liverpool. He was an ex-Londoner who moved to Liverpool following the failure of his first marriage. Graves, an impassioned fan of big band music and their vocalists, introduced Starkey to a wide range of music, including Dinah Shore, Sarah Vaughan, and Billy Daniels. Graves stated that he and Richie never had an unpleasant exchange between them. Starkey later commented about his stepfather, "He was great. I learned gentleness from Harry." After an extended hospital stay following Starkey's recovery from TB, he did not return to school, preferring instead to stay at home and listen to music while playing along by beating biscuit tins drums. Now, it's very interesting. It's very interesting how this worked out, ladies and gentlemen, because you would think that Starkey, there would be nothing for him, but according to Beatles biographer Bob Spitz, he described Starkey's upbringing as a Dickinson or Charles Dickens style chronicle of misfortune. Houses in the area were poorly ventilated, postage stamp size, patched together by crumbling plaster walls, with a rear door that opened onto an outhouse. Sounds like Northern New Brunswick. Crawford commented, like all the families who lived in the dingle, he was part of the ongoing struggle to survive. The children who lived there spent much of their time at Prince's Park, escaping the soot-filled air of their coal-fueled neighborhood. Adding to their difficult circumstances, violent crime was also almost a constant concern for people living in one of the oldest and poorest inner-city districts of Liverpool. Starkey later commented, "You kept your head down, your eyes open, and you didn't get in anybody's way." Now, after his return home from the sanatorium in late 55, Starkey entered the workforce but was lacking in motivation and discipline. His initial attempts at gainful employment proved highly unsuccessful. In an effort to secure himself some warm clothes, he briefly held a railway worker's job with Bristol Rail, which came with an employer-issued suit. He was supplied with a hat but no uniform, and unable to pass the physical exam, he was laid off and granted unemployment. He then found work as a waiter, serving drinks on a day boat that traveled from Liverpool to North Wales. But his fierce conscription into military service led him to quit the job, not wanting to give the Royal Navy the impression he was suitable for seafaring work. In mid-56, Graves secured Starkey a position as an apprentice machinist as Henry Hutton's son, a Liverpool school equipment manufacturer. Now, while working at the facility, Starkey befriended Roy Trafford, and the two bonded over their shared interest in music, and Trafford introduced Starkey to skiffle, and he quickly became a fervent admirer. Now, soon after Trafford piqued Starkey's interest in skiffle, the two began rehearsing songs in a manufacturing plant cellar during the lunch breaks. Trafford recalled they played a guitar and Richie just made a noise over the box. Sometimes he just slapped a biscuit tin with some keys or banged on the backs of chairs. The pair were joined by Starkey's neighbor and co-worker, Eddie Miles, who played guitar, forming the Eddie Miles Band, later renamed Eddie Clayton and the Clayton Squares, after a Liverpool landmark. The band performed popular skiffle songs such as Rock on a Line and Walking Cane, of course, the Donegan influence, with Starkey raking a thimble across a washboard, creating primitive driving rhythms. Starkey enjoyed dancing as his parents had years earlier, and he and Trafford briefly took dance lessons at two schools. Though the lessons were short-lived, they provided Starkey and Trafford with an introduction that allowed him to dance competently while enjoying nights out of the town. And we saw the Hard Day's Night how good of a dancer Richie was. Now, on Christmas Day 57, Graves gave Starkey a second-hand drum kit consisting of a snare drum, a bass drum, and a makeshift cymbal fashioned from a rubbish bin lid. Although basic and crude, the kit facilitated his progression as a musician while increasing the commercial potential of the Eddie Clayton Band, who went on to book prestigious local gigs before the skiffle craze faded in early 58, as American rock and roll, which was pretty well the Elvis invasion a few years later, became highly popular in the UK. Now, November 59, Starkey joined Al Caldwell's Texans, a skiffle group who were looking for someone with a proper drum kit so the group could transition from one of Liverpool's best-known skiffle acts to a full-fledged rock and roll band. They had begun playing local clubs as the Raging Texans, then Jet Storm and the Raging Texans, before settling on Rory Storm and the Hurricanes shortly before recruiting Starkey. Now, I'm not sure exactly this is where Ringo's beard came from, but he had kind of a beatnik look for most of those early years. About this time, he adopted his stage name Ringo Starr, derived from the rings he wore, and also because it implied a country and a western influence. His singing solos were billed as, get this, Star Time. By early 1960, the Hurricanes had become one of Liverpool's leading bands. In May, they were offered a 3-month residency at a Butlins holiday camp in Wales. Although initially reluctant to accept a residency and end his 5-year machinist apprenticeship that he had begun 4 years earlier, Starr eventually agreed to the arrangement. The Butlins gig led to other opportunities for the band, including an unpleasant tour of a U.S. Air Force's base in France, about which Starr commented, "The French didn't like the British, at least I didn't like them. The Hurricanes became so successful they were initially offered a highly coveted residency in Hamburg. They turned it down because of their prior commitment with Butlins. They eventually accepted, joining the Beatles at Bruno Karschkeller on October 1, 1960, where Starr first met the band, and, of course, legendary history was made. Storm's Hurricanes were given top billing over the Beatles, who also received less pay. Starr performed with the Beatles to a few stand-in engagements while in Hamburg. On October 15, 60, he drummed with John Lennon, McCartney, and Harrison, recording with them for the first time while backing Hurricane singer Lou Walters on a George Gershwin, the Bose Hayward area summertime. During Starr's first stay in Hamburg, he also met Tony Sheridan, who valued his drumming abilities to the point of asking Starr to leave the Hurricanes and join his band. Now, Starr quit Rory Storm and the Hurricanes in January 62 and briefly joined Sheridan in Hamburg before returning to Hurricanes for a third season at Butlins. Now, on August 14th that year, Starr accepted Lennon's invitation to join the Beatles. On August 16th, Beatles manager Brian Epstein fired their drummer Pete Best, who recalled, he said, "I've got some bad news for you. The boys want you out and Ringo in." He said Beatles producer George Martin wasn't too pleased with my playing, and the boys thought I didn't fit in. Now, according to a real history, there was more going on here, including some weird family situations, but anyway, check the other podcast I did. He first performed as a member of Beatles officially on August 18, 62 at a Horticultural Society dance at Port Sunlight. After his appearance at a Cavern Club the following day, Best fans, upset by his firing, held vigils outside the house and the club shouting, "Pete Best forever, Ringo never." Harrison received a black eye from one upset fan when Epstein, whose car tires had been flattened in anger, temporarily hired a bodyguard. Now, Starr's first recording session as a member of the Beatles took place on September 4th, 62. He stated that Martin thought he was crazy and couldn't play because he was trying to play the percussion and the drums at the same time, and we were just a 4-piece band. For the second recording session with Starr, on September 11, 62, Martin replaced him with session drummer Andy White while recording takes for what would be the two sides of the Beatles' first single, "Love Me Do," back with "P.S. I Love You." Starr played tambourine on "Love Me Do" and maracas on "P.S. I Love You." Concerned about his status in the Beatles, he thought, "That's the end. They're doing a Pete Best on me." Martin later clarified, "I simply didn't know what Ringo was like, and I wasn't prepared to take any risks." Now, by November 62, Starr had been accepted by Beatles fans, who were now calling for him to sing. He began receiving an amount of fan mail equal to that of the others, which helped to secure his position within the band. Starr considered himself fortunate to be on the same wavelength as the other Beatles. "I had to be, or wouldn't have lasted. I had to join them as people as well as a drummer." He was given a small percentage of Lennon and McCartney's publishing company, Northern Songs, but derived his primary income during this period from a one-quarter share of Beatles Limited, a corporation financed by the band's net concert earnings. He commented on the nature of his lifestyle after achieving success with the Beatles. I lived in nightclubs for 3 years. It used to be a non-stop party. Like his father, Starr became well known for his late-night dancing, and he received praise for his skills. So, see, life is a series of coincidences. I'll give you an example. Why I got into entertainment and sports coverage is because I'm a big fan of the CBC TV channel of the early 70s, which was showing Hockey Night in Canada and Longstreet and Night Gallery and all these great sports and TV shows. I would not have a love of this. So Ringo was always banging on something. He was always making a noise, or cellar full of noise that the communists use. But why is Ringo personality so well liked? It doesn't really, there's no really explanation why. You look at him and you think, well, he's a nice guy, but you wouldn't think the lifelong dedication. And my dad said a very interesting comment. He said he is the first Beatle technically and the last Beatle. He's the first Beatle, the oldest of course, and the first to really be big in the skiffle craze. But and it goes like this: you got Lennon, McCartney, and then Harrison. But Ringo was the last Beatle because Stu had died, and Pete was fired. Again, a lot going on there. But Ringo, again, I want you to talk to your friends or family after listening to podcasts and said, this Frenchman did a podcast on that. Has anybody ever said anything bad about Ringo Starr? The Beatles were fighting. They like Ringo. They would work with Ringo. McCartney wouldn't work with Lennon. Harrison wouldn't work with McCartney. But Harrison, Lennon, and because it's Ringo Starr, like I said, everybody agreed. You have a person in your group that everybody agrees upon? He's one of those. And the aspect of the male personality, you look at Lennon, who was like the angry artist, McCartney, the heartthrob, Harrison, the quiet one, but Ringo Starr is the boisterous one. I put it this way: it's no surprise he was good friends with Keith Moon and Oliver Reed and all these people, because I would like to have a pint with him, because just to talk to him, what makes Ringo Starr? Like, why after all these years Ringo Starr is the most popular Beatle? Like I said, he's the most talented, no. But like I said, he's love of country music, he's skiffle. We see where he came from, and he represents us all. He represents the common man, so he's the common man in the Beatles. Nobody ever says that John Lennon and McCartney and Harrison represent the common man. They represent, talent, or like the college style talent at the time. Ringo represents us. So that's the early years of Ringo Starr. If you like what they're doing with our music podcast, I was going to do something on this a number of months ago, but I wanted to wait to see, not to sound weird, because I heard Ringo wasn't well for a little while. We haven't heard much of him. So if you're a Ringo Starr fan, tell me why you became a Ringo fan. And he left millions of dollars on the floor, as you say, with this. Can you imagine peoples in Canada or ring companies in the States would come up with Ringo rings every once in a while? Why do you think the moon ring became so popular? I know one thing. When I first saw him, I remember the scene. I was no more than 4 or 5 when I saw it, where Ringo's kind of doing the bounce and the dance in the Hard Day's Night. But the reason why I got into photography a little bit, because I saw Ringo use a camera back in Hard Day's Night. So tremendous guy. So ladies and gentlemen, keep appraised of a future rock and roll podcast here. If you like what we're doing, give us a like, comment, subscribe, or share. And as we like to say, I get by with a little help from my friends. Could it be anybody? I just want somebody to love. Have a good one. Bye.